Now, the words that come to mind when you think of an Eagle Scout, like loyal, trustworthy, or courteous, are probably not the words that come to mind when you think of movies like Wild at Heart, or Lost Highway, or Eraserhead, or Blue Velvet. But the movies made by an Eagle Scout, David Lynch. And on Independent Focus, we're going to get to the heart of the contradictions in this man.
This is kind of different from the stuff I normally see at the multiplex.
You're stuck with one interpretation.
Hollywood loves these guns, and it's all like
because if the film doesn't hit, then you're really screwed.
Certain movies kind of unnerve me a little more than others. I just didn't have anything to say at that time.
I sold just about everything I own.
It's like I write the script, I rehearse the actor.
The big difference that more money gives you is just more
Talk is very cheap to shoot.
You sit up here and pontificate about filmmaking.
not to have studios telling me what to do.
My first job in Los Angeles was here at this museum. And I made $5 an hour selling tickets here, which I may be doing after this is over, but that's another conversation. But I know a job you had, we were just talking about backstage, was you were just getting started in filmmaking. You delivered the Wall Street Journal and had worked out this really interesting route where you would deliver the paper.
Right. I was working on Eraserhead, and I was, I had a home, and then I got divorced, and I was then living in the stables of this mansion in Beverly Hills. It doesn't sound like a hardship case, but my ex-wife phoned and said that there was this little bungalow that I could get for $80 a month, and I said, that's too much money. And she said, no, it's an unbelievable deal, and you've got to get this place. And so I figured I had to get a job, and I started delivering the Wall Street Journal. And it was a great job because it was 1 hour a day, and I made $48.02 a week. So it paid the rent, and everything was great.
Now, it must have been a very interesting period for you doing that and then working out Eraserhead, which took you how long to finish?
5 years, but we kept running out of money. We shot for a year straight, and then we ran out of money. That's about the time I got the paper out, and we would get geared up with some money and then shoot a scene, and then, you know, kind of break down again for a while.
But what was that like for you? It must have given you a chance to really live the film as you were making it in a way.
It was a beautiful thing. Now people have, I have more money to work with, but there's a speed that you have to take, and so you don't sink down into a film or into a mood. When you go slow and you're living in the set and in that world, it just becomes part of you. It's a beautiful experience, and ideas, more ideas come out of that.
So, Eraserhead must have taken almost kind of an improvisational qualities. You were
No, not improvisational. It was very specific, but it took a long time to get it right.
It's interesting because your movies almost all are textural first, it seemed like. It's a sort of a sound tapestry with also this really interesting use of space. And I wonder if when something like, let's say, Eraserhead, how a movie like that comes to you. I mean, obviously it was sort of cooking around for a while.
Well, I don't know if anybody knows exactly where ideas come from, but it's one probably for sure has had the experience of getting an idea, and it's strange because 1 minute it's not there, and then it's there, and so films are built. Some ideas are just little fragments. You might get a fragment that is very important to you, and it becomes like a magnet that pulls other ideas, and so it's really a beautiful thing to get one of those ideas. And
But a lot of your ideas seem like that. They seem to be, because you can look at any of these movies as fragments, but there is some sort
no, the movies aren't fragments. The idea is the beginning, and then it's like one piece of a puzzle, and then the next one comes, and the next one comes. You can't tell when they're going to come. That's the problem. You just have to sit quietly and hope that they come along.
What does that do for work habits then, as you're waiting for ideas to come along?
Well, it's a problem. There's a lot of sitting in a comfortable chair is what I like to do, and it's a lot like fishing.
And a lot of fishing isn't about catching a fish, but just going there.
No,
to
you
fish.
want to catch a fish, but everybody who's fished knows that you can only do so much. You bait your hook and you lower it into the water.
And you don't always catch a fish either.
And then you take what you get, but.
But a lot of your movies kind of work like almost classic mystery stories, something that needs to be solved or pieces that need to be put together. And is that one of the things too? You don't want to offer too many solutions to the clues that are up there?
No, the clues are there, and I love mysteries like a book, but I don't like it when it ends and everything is sewn up 100%. So I think some threads have to remain open.
How do you mean?
Well, just so it's not a kind of a spoon-fed solution. It's there. The pieces are there, and they feel correct. And then it's up to all of us to feel our own way.
Actually, we're going to talk about really seeing and get into this a little bit is The Elephant Man, which I grew up in Detroit and I saw it downtown Detroit with an all-black crowd, and just the level of empathy that went to that movie was kind of astonishing to me. I wish you could have seen that movie with that kind of crowd.
Uh-huh.
But it must have been a surprise to people that it would play with what are considered to be inner city audiences.
Not really. That struck a chord. It's a human being, and it struck a chord with people, fortunately, everywhere. And I don't know why that film came to me, but I'm, very glad that it did.
It came as a result partially of Mel Brooks seeing...
No. It came from a man named Stuart Kornfeld. And I'd been trying to, after Eraserhead, I wrote a script called Ronnie Rocket, and I was trying to get that made. And he was an assistant, Mel Brooks' assistant. So,
and he'd seen Eraserhead at the New Art.
Yeah, he'd seen it at the New Art. So I called Stuart and I said, do you know anything I could, direct? And he said, I know 4 things. I said, Stuart, what are these 4 things? And he said, well, the first one is a thing called The Elephant Man. And an explosion really went off in my head. And I said, that's it. And so that...
So you never heard the other 3?
No, I never it may have been great. I don't know.
What went off in your head, though? What do you think when you hear something like that?
It was the only time it ever happened, but it was just a knowingness with a sound. When Mel finally did read this script, he said, okay, the writers are in, Jonathan, you're in, Stuart, you can be involved, but who is this David Lynch? And Jonathan said, well, you've got to see his film Eraserhead. And Mel said, fine. And so he called me up and says, Mel wants to see Eraserhead. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, he said, he wants to see the film. And so I said, Jonathan, it's been great, but I'm out, once he sees this picture. And so Jonathan said, no, settle down, so Mel had a screening over at 20th Century Fox in the screening room there. And for some reason, Jonathan made me come over, and I was pacing out in front of the doors to the theater, and suddenly the doors fly open, and Mel is racing toward me with open arms and hugs me and says, you're a madman, I love you.
Now, as you were making Elephant Man, was it almost kind of like automatic writing for you in that way, that it was this thing you obviously connected with when you heard the title of it, but did you find that was the case in the making of it as well?
No, well, it was a baptism of fire, because it was the first, Eraserhead was very personal and a very small crew, and it took 5 years. And now it was going to England and doing a Victorian drama with a lot of big names. And I didn't really, I felt it, but when I got there, all I really knew were pictures of Victorian England. And it happened one day. I was in a place called the East London Hospital, which was a derelict hospital, but it still had beds in the wards, and it had, but it was just about a foot of dust in the place. And I was walking in that hospital, and like a wind blew into me, and I knew what it felt like to be in that time. And after that, I felt like I owned it, and it was all right.
It sounds almost spiritual, you know, the way this movie...
Well, it was a spiritual picture. John Hurt said that he'd sit for 8 hours getting made up, and during those 8 hours, when he came out, he was John Merrick. It came over him during those hours, each time.
Now, how did you find John Hurt? You must have looked around at a lot of people before you got to him.
Yeah, John Hurt had a hairless left arm. And
Okay.
that was a secondary reason. The primary reason was that John Hurt maybe is one of the finest actors in the world. You know, John Hurt had a kind of such a chameleon-like ability to change, and he had a kind of a aura of greatness to him. There wasn't a lot of other choices, it seems.
Now tell me what it was like for you to move now from Elephant Man. You must have had your choice of things. Were you still trying to get Ronnie Rocket going at that point?
After every film, I try to get Ronnie Rocket going.
What's it about?
I always say the same thing. It's about a man who's 3.5 feet tall with red hair and 60 cycle alternating current electricity.
And then you couldn't get Ronnie Rocket made, so...
I started actually writing Blue Velvet after The Elephant Man. And I wrote 2 drafts, and they were really bad. And
why do you say that?
Well, the head of the studio called me up and started screaming at me. But he was right, you know, in some ways. And I got, you know...
what did he object to? I mean, what was the problem? I
forget. He said very bad things to me, but in a short amount of time, so I can't remember. One thing led to another, and I began, you know, working on Dune.
But what was it you saw in Dune that made you think that you could...
Oh, there was many things. There was a lot of... It was a kind of like a poem to me.
But there's so much detail in it. I'm just wondering what sort of spoke to you in the way that other stuff did in Dune.
I honestly can't remember. I really blocked out a lot of that.
Because, I mean...
Oh, it was a very painful experience.
But that's where you found Kyle MacLachlan, though, right?
Kyle, that's when I first, you know, met and worked with Kyle.
So you get done with that, and that's a year of your life. It wasn't pleasant.
3 years. 3 years.
From start to finish?
From start to finish, yeah.
You've been working on Blue Velvet during
After I finished Dune, we went to see Dino, my agent, and I, and
Dino De Laurentiis.
Dino De Laurentiis, and he says, "David, what do you want to do next?" I said, "I want to do this picture, Blue Velvet," and he says, "You own?" And I said, "Yes," and but I didn't realize that I didn't own it. That while I was working on Dune, it went into turnaround, and then no one picked it up, so it went back to Warner Brothers. And they owned it. And Well, anyway, Dino got on the phone, and the story is that he was talking to the president, I guess, and a girl was running down the hall to stop him from selling it, and before she got to the office, he'd sold it to Dino.
Was it kind of like a world that you felt that you knew in some ways too?
I knew it and I didn't know it. It's partly based on impressions from my life, but a lot of it is coming from someplace else.
Did you know Kyle would be the guy for that too?
Yes, but Kyle didn't want to do this film for a while, and I don't know, I can't remember exactly why. I think he was a bit afraid of it. And then something happened, and he went for it.
I mean, it's another unsettling movie that seemed kind of an interesting thing to go into the mainstream because there's certainly nothing else like it at the time. And I just wonder, as you were working on it, if you felt that it was such a departure from things that were around.
No. You never do something just to do something different. You can't figure what the world will be like a year or a year and a half after you start. You can't worry about those things. Sometimes it's surprisingly good, the reception, and sometimes it's surprisingly bad.
When you first heard the song Blue Velvet, what did it do to you?
It didn't conjure up this film. But there was something about it, this blue and a texture, and somewhere along the line it came to be two other colors. It was black, red lips, green lawn, and this, blue velvet.
It's also one of these movies where the textures come at you first, that whole long opening shot that introduces us to this world that's like worlds and worlds under worlds.
Well, I told you the first things that came. The next thing that came was someone finding an ear in a field, and that ear to me became a ticket to some other, it started the trip to some other world.
And as you were making Blue Velvet, did you have any idea what you wanted to do next?
I had no idea. And it was 4 years before before I finished a film.
Why so long a lag time?
Well, you need to get an idea that you fall in love with. And these ideas are not around every corner, so you don't know when they're going to happen. It was one day, my friend Monty calls me up and asked me to read a book called Wild at Heart, and I read it, and that was it. That's what I wanted to do then. So that's how it happens. It's either a book or an idea.
So what did you see in the book that made you want to do it?
I saw a love story in a violent and insane world. And the feeling in the air was like that to me then. So I saw a love story where the man and the woman were equal.
But it's a powerful, a very violent movie, and it got a lot of sort of outraged responses to it. Were you surprised at that?
Well, I feel that films, for the most part, don't start violence. They mirror violence. They mirror, what's happening. So that was Wild at Heart.
Which seems odd because every movie you've made has been different from the one that's come before it.
Well, again, it's the ideas. You don't repeat yourself. You're waiting for that next thing.
And the next thing for you was television.
Well, that was Twin Peaks.
Now, how did that come about?
I had met Mark Frost, excuse me, and I'm a smoker. I would really love to have a smoke right now.
Go ahead.
Is it okay? Man, that would be beautiful. Thank you very much.
Have some water, too.
Okay.
I was waiting for you to light up here.
Anyway, we got together, and strangely, the ideas started flowing. And we worked at Mark's house, and sometimes things just unfold in a really beautiful way. And I remember when we finished the pilot script, it was late at night and I drove back and I stayed up and read it, and I called up Mark and I said, you know, this thing is really good. It really feels really good. And he said, it does. And we were surprised.
And was it pretty much the script that you wrote that you shot? Did they,
Exactly.
The network didn't ask for a lot of changes at all?
No, the network stayed very, much out of it, and were very supportive in the beginning.
In the beginning?
Yeah.
So did that change?
Well, it was our idea that Laura Palmer's killer would not be found, and for a long time, and that that would move to a more background story, and but it needed to be there always as the prime mystery, and once you solve that, we felt we'd be finished, and it was true.
So you finish with television and you decide to do.
What did I decide to do?
I'm asking you.
I did. I did Fire Walk with Me. Thank you. There's some sequences in that film that deeply thrill me, and but that went over very badly. And during the year or year and a half that it took to make that, the world changed in a way that it was extremely, poorly received. So that was, when you make something that you really love and you get bad reviews and, bad box office, it's not as painful as like with Dune, where I knew I'd done things wrong, and then it still turned out poorly. So it's a double negative.
So then
I waited until 1995 when Barry and I started writing Lost Highway.
And how did you decide to write with him?
He wrote a book called Night People, and in it was a phrase called Lost Highway. We mentioned the two girls are talking about going down the Lost Highway, and something about those words struck me and started a dream going, and those words connected with an idea that came also one other night, and I told Barry about that idea, and he said about Lost Highway, let's write something. So those two things united and started us going.
How do you come to find music for the movies? Because that's a very important part of the pictures.
A lot of music is found up front, and you kind of gather together music. And then I work with Angelo Badalamenti, we sit and I talk to Angelo, and then he starts, working, and then I talk to him some more, and he starts working over here, and then little by little something forms that feels right. So I go into shooting with a lot of either existing music and Angelo's music, and play these things while we're shooting through the headphones so I can hear the dialogue and the music at the same time. Sometimes we play it out loud, and it helps you verify a mood and a pace, and then a lot of music comes later too, but the more you have up front, the better off you are. Many ideas come out of music. A picture starts forming in your head, and or characters come, or both, just out of the music, and it's every time I work with Angelo, something like that happens.
Well, I think what's time to do now is go to the audience for some questions.
Hi, I was wondering, I have a early draft of Blue Velvet.
Yeah?
With an alternate ending that has Dorothy jumping off the roof of her apartment building. And I was just curious if that was actually filmed, and when the idea came about to switch the ending to the park scene.
Well, something isn't finished until it's finished. And along the way of any project, one lots of times gets bad ideas. And hopefully you catch them and get rid of them. And so every draft, every early draft, they should be destroyed. And a script is only a way to get a kind of a structure and certain things right. And then the film is what it's aimed toward. And so a script is not a thing really that really means anything after the film is finished.
Hi, I was wondering what it is that you see that you want your audience to understand when you show doppelgangers and opposites and the dark side of life versus the light side?
You know, these ideas that come along, they sort of thrill you, and they inspire you to translate those to film. And the whole process is kind of beautiful. And they feel a certain way when they arrive, and you try to get that feeling and even more in the final thing. And if it feels correct to you, you think, well, maybe it will feel that way for others. And you know it won't feel that way for everyone.
Oh, one last question, I guess, here.
Hi, David. I wanted to ask you, when you get to the filming process, do you have every single frame inside your head, or is it something that's continually developing when you get to editing? Like, for instance, the scene in Lost Highway when you bring the cabin that's burning in the very beginning of the film. Is that something that
That's a good question. There's certain things that you discover along the way. That burning cabin was never in the script. And there's a special effects guy I'd love to work with named Gary D'Amico. And I was out in the desert, we were shooting in the desert, and something struck me, and I asked Gary if he had any explosives. And so he said, yeah, I've got some things. How big an explosion do you want? And I said, really, really big. And he couldn't get all the stuff that he wanted to get. And in a strange way, that worked out. You know, the explosion is, it's many colors. It's not quite powerful. It just sort of floats the stuff out, whereas a larger explosion would just obliterate the cabin. So it turned out so beautiful because he didn't have the right things and he wasn't prepared. That's just a happy accident. Once you have something like that, it could feed its way into someplace else.
Well, I think that's all the time we have. Let's thank David Lynch for being here tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Elvis. Thank you very much.
That wasn't too painful for you.
No, no.